Hi, my name's Chris. I'm a crew member on board Yacht America. I'm originally from coastal New Jersey, but I've been a sailing instructor in San Francisco, California for the past 4 years. I'm a friend of the captain's from a local yacht club in San Francisco, so I got the opportunity to crew on board the yacht as we were doing our East Coast tour in support of the America's Cup, the 35th running of the America's Cup next June in Bermuda. So being a crew member on board is a lot of fun. We're visiting over 150 yacht clubs, sailing centers, maritime museums over the next 13 months as we go up and down the East Coast this summer, the Gulf Coast of the United States this fall, the Caribbean this winter, and again, all leading up to the 35th running of the America's Cup in Bermuda next June 2017. Some of my favorite parts are getting to visit all the different sailing centers, yacht clubs, meet lots of new people, different sailing cultures and traditions. It's been a great time being here in New Bedford and seeing the city and meeting the people here. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of the Northeast and the East Coast and meeting lots of great new people and sailing with them.
How far up does the wood go in the mast?
This mast is entirely wood.
It is?
Yep, the main mast is carbon. So if you knock on them both, you can hear the difference. And then how far up it goes about 90 feet off the deck.
Thank you.
We are going to be in a bunch of races over the next 13 months. Newport to Bermuda is coming up in a couple of weeks. The boat can be sailed with as little as 2 people traditionally. However, it helps a lot more if you got more people. We are a crew of 6, which gets us through most day-to-day activities pretty efficiently. When we are going to race to Bermuda, we're going to have about 12 to 15 people on board, and that really helps sail the boat faster.
Welcome, my name is Troy Sears again. I'm the owner of the boat and the captain of the boat and the engineer on the boat and everything else. Anything that breaks, I know how to fix it. It's an unusual setup for a boat this size where you have an owner captain and it's because the America has been a lifelong passion of mine to get to this point. So. All right, so this is just to give you an idea, this was America in February. Just before leaving, we had in preparation for the trip, we hauled it out. You'll see it's all gray. We completely repainted the boat. And that was the shine right after it was painted. It was definitely a huge project for us. And we're still always constantly working. The trip across the Atlantic was, from San Diego to here was a lot of punishing conditions for the boat. And now we have to redo all the varnish again too on the boat because of that. You might see some wooden boxes up on deck, and we just got a supply of cases and cases of varnish today. So I'm very excited to get going on varnish, and now I have to motivate my crew to do the same. So a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Troy Sears. I like this this slide because when I started doing presentations, everyone said, you got to tell us a little bit about yourself. So I was exposed to sailing at 9, bought my first boat at 12, and that's it there, a Hobie 12, and that's me in it with my stepbrothers, and off we went. That was my boat until I made it to high school. And at the same time, my mother, when I was 12 years old, bought me a book called Showdown at Newport about the America's Cup. And I became infatuated about the America's Cup from that book. My first cup was in 1987, just as a fan in Perth, Australia. I traveled to Australia for it to watch Dennis Conner beat Australia to bring the cup back after losing it in 1983 to the winged catamaran Australia 2, who's on the wall here. And then worked my way up in the administration. So by 1995, I was number 2 in the administration of the event. Always funny how things happen with Dennis Conner winning and bringing it back to my hometown of San Diego. And then the president of the America's Cup for the event in 1995 was a gentleman that I've known since I was 7 years old. So funny how these things work. After the Cup left San Diego, after we lost to New Zealand, I started a company there called Next Level Sailing to maintain San Diego's legacy of having the America's Cup there. And that was the catalyst of starting a sailing business. I had several America's Cup boats, like Dennis Conner's boat from 1995, another boat that sailed in New Zealand in 2000. And I have more time on the helm of a boat that has raced in the America's Cup than anyone on the planet, but never during an America's Cup race. Okay? So if Dennis Conner is Mr. America's Cup, then I'm Mr. America's Cup fan. Okay? In 2005, I was humbled to be able to purchase America, ultimately with my college roommate who lives in New Jersey. His name is Eddie Novak. In 2008, I started doing hospitality work for the U.S. team in the America's Cup, and that relationship continues today. And I also started an organization in San Diego to bring sailing events to San Diego, and we were successful bringing a couple events there, such as what's known as an RC44 and an America's Cup World Series event. That's the same kind of event that was in New York 4 weeks ago. Okay, did any of you watch that event? All right, not surprised. Okay, so I like to say why we're doing the tour, and really we're doing the tour for 2 reasons. For 5 years, I've been asking the administrators of the America's Cup if I can do a tour, and for 5 years they said no, and last June they said yes, and within 3 weeks of that we were heading north to British Columbia from San Diego to do a West Coast tour, and it proved so popular that we said, okay, we're going to come to the East Coast. So why are we doing it? Well, we're doing it because there's a younger generation who's never heard of it, and there's an older generation who is very passionate about it. And when I mean they're passionate about it, they're either passionate about it because they support it, or they're passionate about it because they're irritated by it in the direction it's gone in terms of catamarans, and it's in Bermuda and things like that. So we wanted to have a conversation, and that's why I call it a conversation instead of a presentation. I like hearing other people's point of view, just like with you gentlemen earlier. I love hearing questions like, will it return to monohulls? How did it get to Bermuda? Why aren't there more Americans on the American boat? All these kind of questions I like to bring. Let's get them out here today, okay? So the idea of the tour came with this picture, which is after the team won on Valentine's Day of February. We brought the cup back to the United States, and the crowds were huge. At that time, the American sailing audience had to endure 12 different lawsuits from the America's Cup in 2010, and it was important to spend some time with fans to say, hey, let's talk about what happened. Hey, it was a long struggle, but we got it back, and let's talk about the direction it's going in. And then this is giving an idea. You ask like what we do now. So this is us in the hospitality role, supporting the team in San Francisco, it's a pretty good gig. You have to take out the team's guests, and you get a front row seat to watch the race. Things could be worse. Okay, so what is the America's Cup? Now these 3 gentlemen already know the answer, right? See if you can remember. So why did they build the America?
I read the story before I came down here.
Yeah.
Billy, this guy knows all about it. He'll give you 20.
I told you 10 minutes ago. Okay, to showcase American naval architecture superiority at the First World's Fair. Okay, and when you walk out of the boat, you'll see a poster over here about that, and it has become sailing's pinnacle event. It is the state of sailing, in particular of sailing naval architecture. How fast can you make a sailboat go? Not necessarily about who the best sailors are, although today They're definitely combining them with both. And I realize that also means there's a lot more teamwork in the Cup now than there was in the past because of the speed they're going at. Before, you could, on a 12-meter boat, you'd have grinders, and there could be a lot of communication between the trimmers and the grinders. Hey, start to grind. There's no time for that now. Everyone has to be so skilled that they need to know what they're doing. Because when things are moving at over 50 miles an hour, everyone on the boat has to be very capable. And then, of course, it's the oldest international sporting trophy. So how did it get started? It got started when Queen Victoria is convinced by her husband, Prince Albert, to build the Crystal Palace in London to host the first World's Fair. And I encourage you to look at the poster on the way out. And we being the United States, wanted to bring only items that we felt we were the leaders in the world and where we had superiority. So we brought medical devices and musical instruments, pistols, agricultural equipment, printing equipment, but the showcase item was America, to showcase American naval architecture superiority. And why were we superior? We were superior because New York Harbor pilots at the time needed a fast boat for competitive reasons. If we were all New York Harbor pilots here and we were all out on the water and we all saw a boat coming across from Europe to New York Harbor and it showed up on the horizon, whoever got there first got the job. So it wasn't like you get the next one and you get the next one, you get the next one. Nope, if you can beat him, you got it. Well, then everyone wanted a faster boat and a faster boat and a faster boat. So it's no surprise that George Sears, the designer of the America, was a New York Harbor pilot naval architect, and that the captain of the America was Captain Brown, and Captain Brown was a New York Harbor pilot. And in fact, this is another place where America inserts herself into history, because Queen Victoria and Prince Albert went on board to congratulate the owners and the crew and Captain Brown on a fantastic victory, and they made sure that was widely reported at the time as an olive branch, if you will, a sign that we'd like to improve relations with the U.S. I have been a witness to so many great things about the America's Cup that I feel like I can share a learned perspective that will give you a new look. This is one of my favorite pictures with America. Here's the boat that won in 2010 before it had a winged mast. In other words, this is their shorter configuration. Ultimately, it was going to have a winged mast that was actually going to be taller. I like it because you're on America and you get a sense of the size of America. Now you get the sense of the size of the boat that raced in 2010. To give you an idea, that the ultimate mast, winged mast, would not fit under the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm going to show you a couple of videos. The first one is what it looks like when we're on this boat watching one of those boats go by. And this is just a training session. Right. All right. So not like your father's Oldsmobile anymore. And that's a little bit about our tour. That was actually in Port Townsend. I would say Port Townsend, of the cities I visited so far on the East Coast, I would say Port Townsend is the most synergistic on what I had on the West Coast. Port Townsend, really a very maritime town. And they were all stacked up, ready to get on when the tour started, and that's what we had this morning. Okay, now here's another clip about the last America's Cup, starting with how they started with smaller catamarans and going to the larger ones. San Diego, my hometown. Venice, there had to have been 500,000 people watching there. So those are 45 footers. Now you're going to look at the 72 footers. I was thinking we're still on. Sorry. And now they're fully foiling, or completely out of the water.
What are the hulls made out of now?
Carbon fiber. And that's a sample of the hull structure there.
The entire sailing world holds its breath for the start of the 34th America's
You do not go back to get them.
I put the man overboard real for nothing.
So when they go in the water, you just keep going without them.
What happened to the rule that you have to end up with as many crew as you started?
And that's in the general rules of racing, but there's an exemption during America's Cup races. You don't have to go back. But they have tenders to do that.
You lose a...
Each position is so valuable on the boat that you're actually heavily penalized by not having that person there.
It's not over. It's a long way from over. Imagine if these guys lost from here. What an upset that would be. That'd be one hell of a story. That'd be one hell of a comeback. That's my motivation. Almost flipped this thing over. That's incredible. As they come to the line, the comeback is complete.
You see us here now? Come on. There we are. Always like seeing that. How fast was 72? The fastest during the race, actually observed during the race, was just under 49 knots. Now, during practices they go over 50, but actually in race conditions our boat got to 49 knots. Knots. So about 57, 58 miles an hour. That's us on actually in Los Angeles on the West Coast. This is really the why we do it. And everyone in this room right now is my generation, but we're trying to connect also with a younger generation. I'm not, and so I really like it when we have both generations in the room, because you can quickly see how important it is to do this. Our generation loves the majesty, the beauty of monohulls going through the water, and would, for the most part, would like to see it return to that. This younger generation, they like speed, and if that's what it takes to attract junior sailing to grow again in the United States, so that sailing doesn't die with our generation, then I think they're on the right track. Okay. Otherwise, I think on the path it was on, it was going to evaporate. It was going to go away. And for me personally, I never understood why the boat, if the America's Cup was about naval architecture superiority, why the boat Reliance in 1903 was going faster than the boats in 2003. 100 years later. So now they're back to designing boats that are the fastest you can build. Just how fast can you make it go? The limiting factor now in the boats are the foils themselves. I'm going to go a little bit about the boats. By the way, that's the director center of George Steers, the designer. This is Sail Sandpoint, one of our locations on the East Coast. Awesome. Okay, so here's the boats they're sailing. Now, the key thing about the boats is keeping them in this foiled position, right? Now, a lot of the elements of the boats are now common between the other teams. I don't agree with that. I think all the boats should be built exclusively from scratch from the country of the team. So there are some things that I'm not personally in favor of, but anything that's in the water, like the foils in the water, open design competition. You can build them any way you want. And so it will be about these foils, about the wing also, the trailing edge of the wing that's open. You can build it any way you want. And how you can control it. So just like if we're in an airplane and we have a nice level flight while we're at altitude, these boats want to have a nice level flight also. On an airplane, though, they have an autopilot that can do that for them and basically keep the airplane at a nice level trim. On these boats, the captain has to do it himself. So in this case, Jimmy Spithill has to work these tabs you see on the bottom of the wheel. Who has to then, with those tabs, change the angle of these foils to maintain a level flight. It's not allowed to be automated, right? You have to be doing that, and that happens up to 2 to 3 times a second, to give you an idea, to keep the boat at level flight. So in other words, the other thing we've learned is that people might have been really good at sailing at 6 knots, may not be very good at 50 knots, okay? And people who didn't really necessarily stand out at 6 knots, but were really good at video games and all these kind of things, and they got going at 50 knots, all of a sudden became really good because you have to make decisions very rapidly also. So it is definitely a different type of sailing. You have to be very physically fit to handle these boats. Everyone has multiple jobs. The grinders are grinding to develop hydraulic pressure so that those foils can be adjusted. And that hydraulic pressure has to be human generated. Okay? Now the new boats this time around, for those who are really, really technical, they're allowed to have what we call an accumulator, allowed to build up as they're moving those handles, build up enough reservoir pressure to get through one tack. And that was put in for safety purposes. If something went wrong and you had to, let's say, punch out of the race, you wanted to have enough hydraulic pressure to at least get one tack done on reserve. Yeah, just from this basically was put in place after one of the sailors died in a crash, and they said, "Listen, we got to make these boats. We got to do a couple things to make these boats safer," and that was one of the things they did. Next one's in Bermuda. I'm from San Diego. We were the last. There were 7 cities from the United States being considered for the next America's Cup. Newport being the closest one from here. It worked its way down to between San Diego and Bermuda. So I always like to tell people essentially the tail of the tape between why it isn't going back to San Francisco, which was such a beautiful, windy location. How come it didn't go to at least to San Diego, and how did it end up in Bermuda? Well, basically, the tail of the tape is Bermuda offered $15 million as an event fee. San Diego's number was 0. San Francisco's number was about a -30. In other words, you'd have to pay, and I'm not being sarcastic, San Francisco was going to require payment for any of the facilities they use and for city services and things like that, so it was going to cost them quite a bit of money just to go to San Francisco. Then there was about sponsorship support. Bermuda said that the government of Bermuda will guarantee that they will generate at least $25 million of local sponsorship support. San Diego, we were able to rustle up about $10 million. And San Francisco said, sponsorship is your problem, it's your event, you can raise money any way you want. So then the last one, of course, was infrastructure support. And this is going to somewhat get to your point. San Francisco was going to require going through an environmental process that was going to take 2 years to go through. And they wanted to start proceeding immediately. San Diego, being a state law, was going to be the same thing. And Bermuda said you could start putting shovels in the ground tomorrow. So a younger millennial audience is growing now, both at the junior sailing level, at the high school level, at the collegiate level. There has been a reversal, and these programs are growing, and sometimes substantially now. So is it working? Yes. Is it frustrating for an older generation who wants it the way they want it? Sure. Now for me, one thing I have observed is that in car racing, we have no problem making a distinction between classic car racing and Formula One racing or things like that. But in sailing, we like to merge the two. There's this component of we want more classic type vessels racing in the pinnacle events, whereas cars we seem very comfortable in separating the two activities. You know. And if sailing dies with my generation, to me that would be heartbreaking. The sailing changed my life. The ability to teach a new generation the values that sailing can teach, and that only sailing can teach. If the new generation is actually having a positive impact in terms of growth for junior sailing, well, I'm all for it. Because if any of you are members of yacht clubs, and your yacht club hasn't over, let's say, the last 20, 30 years seen a creep up in age, then you're one of the rare yacht clubs in the United States.
I got no balls for losing.
Shocking. Drives it road all the time. Just had a few drinks. Just can't be happening.
Are we clear? Clear.
We're just buzzed.
Just buzzed? You didn't tell us that, sir. You're right, this isn't happening. He'll be fine.
I feel good. Really?
No, not really.
Buzz driving.
Clear.
Maybe we should stop acting like it's no big deal.
Shocking.
Real men know that getting tested is the way to take care of their families. That's why real men wear gowns. For a list of the tests you need, go to ahrq.gov.